And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
Blake, how are you doing today?
Well, much better than Notre Dame fans. Buddy, let me ask you a question. What does it feel like to be a Notre Dame fan?
Constantly disappointed. Constantly disappointed. Look, I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm not a Yankees fan. But or a Lakers fan. I know that those fan bases tend to get bundled together as a joke, but it makes a lot of sense. When things look like they're trending in the right direction and things are starting to look pretty good, there's always some sort of comeuppance. There's always some sort of ironic twist. And what we're referring about today is Charles Jagasaw, who is going to be out for the year with a pectoral injury, which is not fun to deal with. It is an injury that I suffered when I was in college as well. I am praying for his recovery, but that absolutely sucks for Notre Dame.
Well, now becomes another question. Joe, you are replacing a big-time left tackle. You had a really good player that in Jagasaw that you thought that you were going to put there. Mm-hmm. I do question if there's a team athletic enough that legitimately, can, I still think that they could be fine during their schedule run. When they get in the playoffs against better and more athletic defenses, I think that it could be an issue for them if they're able to get there, clearly. But it would be an issue, I think, potentially there. Joe, thank God you got a very athletic quarterback. And to be honest with you, with a guy that had an injury last year, when you have an offensive lineman that does go down, it can be an issue.
Well, the one thing that I'm mostly concerned about is, one, you just talked about how we lost Joe Alt. Joe Alt moved on to the NFL, and he was a very premier player, but I wasn't worried, and I think a lot of Notre Dame fans weren't worried about the expectation for what was next. And Charles Jagasaw, there were high expectations based on what we saw in practices, based on what we saw in the Sun Bowl and the performance that he had. The thing that worries me the most is, yes, what you mentioned, having to go on that playoff run. I am worried about who steps up and has to match up with Patrick Payton and Marvin Jones against Florida State. I worry about week one, who is going to have to go toe-to-toe with Nick Scourton, because I'm telling you right now, Mike Elko is the type of coach that is going to say, you know what, whatever young kid that you're going to put out there, we're going to go beat the shit out of him every single play, and we're going to send Scourton after him every single snap. That could end up being a really brutal outing, and that was something that we mentioned was going to be a difficult battle. Sullivan Absher, who I'm not even has caught up on, because I didn't even think that this kid was going to even step on the field. But it could be really, really tough sledding in week one.
Not only that, Joe, let me ask you, I don't think that, there's a legitimate chance that the line moves significant. Does Jagasaw get, is he a point and a half going down in that game? I don't know. But Joe, you got a new OC, a new quarterback, game one, new left tackle gets hurt. Joe, that game, all right, you keep look, I'm not playing when I say this, and I mean this. That game at Kyle Field just got a little bit more hairy. We both said that could be potentially a 7-point game. Joe, you talking about a 3 and 4 point game now? In reality, don't forget what the line says. Joe, if Nick Scourton goes off, then what?
Well, this is where, and again, we've talked about this game a number of times. That has the opportunity to be a huge momentum builder for Notre Dame. If they go out there and they play that game strong, they win the game, they win it by a touchdown, it is a galvanizing point where the rest of their schedule until they face Florida State and USC at the end of the season, it's a pretty light stretch. So you beat Texas A&M, you start to build confidence, and you're not really getting challenged. And then you're at that high point where you get to face Florida State at home. That is so significant for your season and your expectations. But if this is a really tough out, if they lose, I think it really derails any momentum that they have. And then if it's maybe a close, very short point win victory, I don't know what the expectation coming out of that would be. But it just sucks that the first game of the year that they're going to have to throw somebody in there that's unexperienced, when that was already the case. But said unexperienced player that was supposed to go in was somebody that there were, lofty expectations of how he could perform.
Look, let me just say this, okay? Because, and I'm dead serious when I say it. You can argue with me all you want to. It is what it is. Marcus Freeman cannot help that his premier left tackle goes down, and Jagasaw can't help that whatsoever, right? However, Joe, they're also having some issues in recruiting. Steve Wilkfong is reporting that Deuce Knight is potentially.
Okay, he hasn't decommitted yet. He hasn't decommitted yet, so let's wait until he decommits. He hasn't decommitted yet. Okay, look, I have heard more about this than I wish I did.
Okay, we'll start getting to reality here. Can I get to my main point here? Freeman needs a big win. He needs a massive win because, Joe, perception right now is starting to become a little bit of reality. Are you going to sit here and argue with me that they don't?
No, I'm not going to argue with you over the Deuce Knight thing because I heard from multiple people that they think that thing is imminent. But at the same time, he has also very recently told the whole Notre Dame recruiting class that he had no intention to go anywhere. He could decommit. I just don't want to react to that until that does happen. It probably very well will end up happening. Apparently, though, Absher's not next up at left tackle. Emil Wagner, who is one of the backups, I think, right now, is potentially who could be next up, or Tosh Baker could be who's playing at that left tackle spot. Tosh Baker has played some, so that might not be as gaudy of a situation.
Okay, well, at least this happened early in camp, and you can figure some things out here.
That's true.
That if there is a very, but Joe, that is a position and that is a situation. Joe, name off all the backups you want to. It doesn't matter. Someone's going to have to step up in that position.
I'm just trying to correct myself. I texted somebody to give me clarification so we weren't running with the wrong
I got you. What I'm trying to say here is I do think Marcus Freeman needs a PR win. The next PR win that he can get at the current moment is going on the road in the SEC to Texas A&M and winning. Now you have potentially – now I don't know this gentleman, but a lot of people in the scout world say they love him. I forget the guy's name. But he's got Scourton as the number 1 overall player on his big board. Okay, so you're talking about a guy, I'll find it if you need it. But if Scourton is as good as you and all these people think from a draft perspective, what's he going to do to a true freshman, a red-shirted freshman that has seen zero action?
Well, it's going to be somebody who's slightly more experienced than that. But you're 100% right. That's where my main concern comes from. Is this kid Scourton is going to be a first-round pick. He is going to be a highly coveted prospect. And for him to step in and have to square off with a guy who's got barely any reps underneath his belt, it could be a really brutal game. The bigger part, too, is what's the deal with Riley Leonard, who is coming off of being injured last year. We're hoping that he's fully healthy and ready to go. And he's stepping into a spot where if he's maybe just like at the final 95% and he gets hit on his blind side, that could be just a total brutal end to expect just any thought of what would happen during the season.
Nick Scourton's not that only defensive lineman that is turning heads. Now, Joe, fall camp is fall camp, right? Like, I mean, you can't take too much out of fall camp sometimes because they blow out of proportion. Texas A&M right now is the people that are at camp and watching all these practices are legitimately coming out here saying Shamar Stewart has been unblockable.
Shamar Stewart's another. Well, he's going to be playing in the interior, and the Notre Dame's interior offensive line.
I don't care where they're playing. That's just another dude that you have to add into here. Yeah. Joe, I'm getting really close to picking Texas A&M week 1.
Dude, I mean, do it. Go ahead. I'm not going to push back on you picking Texas A&M, and I think it makes things more entertaining for you and I yelling at each other on Saturday when that game kicks off.
I will say, remember, the biggest win that I had on you about Notre Dame last year was that Louisville was going to clap them cheek. It was one of the only wins I got on you last year, and it happened. Elks with a $5 super chat says, did you see the Michigan media guy? Which one? Said Connor Stallions was at SMU because he had been scouting for them for months.
There's going to be a lot of he said, she said. I trust Thamel's reporting. I think that's going to be the closest to accurate information that we have right now. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if CMU, and we said this yesterday, I wouldn't be shocked if CMU and you mentioned South Carolina, I wouldn't be shocked if there aren't a number of schools that are tied into this. Because if you do think about this, though, Stalions didn't need to be on the sideline to accomplish what he was trying to do. He could have done it from the stands. So there's a possibility that he was helping Central Michigan. Like there's a real chance that he was down there to help them in that matchup because he also had additional information and had a close tie to somebody in the coaching staff. It was lone a sign stealer. That's what it.
However, let me just say this. I have seen this, to Elks' point in question today. I have seen this. There's a lot of people from Michigan that are in college football media or media in general. Big school. And they're out here defending it. The biggest lie that I've heard today by people I respect, and look, we can have differences of opinion. You cannot legitimately tell me that Michigan, has been hit as a school. Jim Harbaugh got hit, but what is the ramifications for the school? What are the ramifications for anything? They got to see penalty. They're not coming after them again. This is already an investigation. And Joe, let me say this. Everybody out here defending Michigan, you got to come back a little bit to reality in this sense. Joe, what about everybody else that the NCAA has fined, penalized, taken scholarships from for less? Okay, so this is something that's not just I heard Michigan media saying today that this was like a traffic incident. Look what's going on at Georgia. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not even remotely close.
That's not the same. That's not fair to make that comparison. But wait, where I push back on that is that the last few scandals that we have, yes, we have had, the Tennessee one's the most recent one. We did have a show cause with Jeremy Pruitt. But the NCAA has shifted away from vacating wins. They've shifted away from taking away significant scholarships. It has been mostly hold on. It has been mostly significant fines that they have been doing. So if there is going to be a severe punishment, it'll probably be a hefty fine and a suspension for Sharon Moore. That's probably what it's going to be.
You cannot convince me that if you have signs or stole someone's signs, you can't convince me that that does not benefit you. The reason you do it is because it is benefiting you. I think that the people defending this and bashing on the NCAA are pure idiots. I really believe that. You cannot tell me that the NCAA is doing anything wrong here by investigating. And then here's my final point on this. And then everybody and their mama will come out here and try to defend, they're not doing anything with NIL in the portal. Bitch, let them do their job. Let them do their goddamn job. There is nobody in their right mind that wants the Wild Wild West to continue to get crazier.
You're bringing up a lot of shit. I don't even know what angle we're going at here.
Behind this, I told you. This is my Joe.
I just don't think that this warrants the reaction because again, and I texted you about this earlier.
It warrants the reaction.
It doesn't. The sign stealing thing does not warrant this aggressive of a reaction because again,
I've been good.
Ryan Day. We found this out. I found this out because I did a little digging earlier. Ryan Day was the coach that complained about Brent Venables, and There was reported on. Multiple people wrote articles about it.
Do you have proof of him being on the sidelines and doing what you have with Connor Stallions? Do you have that proof?
You don't have it to that degree, but I'm not shocked that Ryan Day was the one who complained last time when he faced off with Clemson.
It doesn't matter.
It does. It's the same crime. It's the same goddamn crime. Okay, it matters.
You know what the same crime was?
What?
Ra Thomas, and I know that he got kicked off.
That doesn't have anything to do. That doesn't have anything to do with this. We're talking about stealing signs on the field.
No, hold on.
Improper advantages.
Hold on.
We're not talking about guys getting in trouble for doing inappropriate things off the field.
Okay, he got kicked off the team. The girl also got arrested the first time.
That doesn't have anything to do with this.
Hold on, goddammit. When someone gets popped with something and other people have been popped with stuff, how are you going to sit here and tell me that a fine is worthy of what happened?
You're not going to – what punishment are you going to deliver to the University of Georgia for –
Okay, if you're an Ohio State fan, I can't believe I'm the one defending Ohio State. If you're Ohio State in that one game that you should have beaten Michigan, where Stallions was not out there to the public known to be doing this, Joe, they could have been a number 1 overall seed. They don't play Georgia in that first round. So now you're trying to sit here and tell, if you're an Ohio State, Joe, if this happened to Notre Dame's biggest rival, you would be on the countertops screaming.
No, I wouldn't, because I'm trying to have an unbiased viewpoint of this, because frankly, a lot of Notre Dame fans right now are taking a victory lap. They are. They absolutely are. My whole comments on something I tweeted yesterday was all Notre Dame fans chiming in because they're so cheery and happy that Michigan's getting screwed over. I'm not in that camp. I don't like Michigan. As a Notre Dame fan, I do not like Michigan. I hate Michigan. Most of the people from my hometown were snobby people that freaking went there, who parents went there as well. I have no desire to like them or to support them. But as an unbiased media member who's trying to cover college football, I have to side with the fact that what they did is something that is done across the highest levels of college football. And people have complained about it from every single level. People complain about it all the time. They just got caught because they were doing it better and more aggressively than everybody else was.
2 things. Then we got to roll.
Okay.
I have been good all summer. I haven't come out here and yelled, screamed like I did last summer. Not once until tonight. I hadn't screamed like that all summer. You know that's true. And secondly, I'm glad that I was able to be the person that got that shirt that you're wearing able to come to fruition. All right, let's get to our good friend. Let's get to our good friend Chris Gates. Joe, tell us about our good friend there before we get to break here.
Yeah, so I mentioned yesterday, Chris Gates is launching his August plan for his online fitness training camp, and he's going to incorporate some of our favorite lifts, deadlifts, power cleans. We used to kill those when we were playing back in the days at our small Division I programs that we played for. And if you want to sign up, make sure you go and check out chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp. Training camp is an online fitness community designed specifically for sports fans to help you get results with your health and fitness without cutting out everything you love, like beer drinking and tailgating for football games in the fall. In training camp, you'll get all the support that you need to build muscle, burn fat, and stay consistent with your workouts. And at the same time, you'll instantly join a community of like-minded people doing the exact same thing. Click the link in the description, chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp, and use code RuffinoJoe and get a discount on your first month.
We'll be back next. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. All right, let's get rolling. Joe, last night we talked about the Big 12. We both agreed on our champion. Now, we had some mix-ups in the top couple of 4 there, but tonight we go over to the ACC, a team that a conference, that might have more changes than anybody. It's not the ACC anymore that we know it. It's basically, it could be the ACC, the All-Coast Conference, not the Atlantic Coast Conference, with teams like Cal and Stanford in the mix here. We're going to continue on our power rankings, and we're going to give our conference champion. Joe, let's start off with yours here. Who do you think is going to win the ACC, and where you have it slotted 9 through 17?
At 17, I've got Stanford, 16, UVA, 15, Wake Forest, 14, Cal, 13, Pitt, 12, Boston College, 11, Syracuse, 10, Georgia Tech, and then 9, got the Duke Blue Devils.
So mine here, Stanford, we pretty much agree. Boston College and UVA are pretty much in the same thing. Duke at 14, 13 is Pitt, 12 Wake Forest, 11 Cal. I'm going to come back to them. Yeah, 10 Georgia Tech, and number 9 Syracuse. Joe, there is one team both in our 9 through 12 here that I'm very interested in. that being the Pitt Panthers. Eli Holstein comes in. They had a bad season a year ago. They were 3-9, had a lot of injuries. And I think that they did play a massive factor in there. Pat Narduzzi is one of the more interesting head coaches in the conference. Your thoughts on Pat Narduzzi, Pitt, and the Pitt Panthers? Do you think that they could look, because they've been decent at times, but 3-9 last year, that was abysmal.
Former Rhody Ram, Pat Narduzzi, was a linebacker at Rhode Island, so I'll always give him some support. But yeah, I just don't know what this team is in 2024. It's not the same one that had Kenny Pickett, that won the conference, that went on to a pretty highly competitive bowl game. I forget which one it was when Kenny Pickett was there. They've taken a couple steps back. They seemingly aren't exactly as aggressive as they could be in the portal and in recruiting as they've been. They lost Deion Hayes to Colorado. I just don't really know what to expect from Pitt. This is there's a lot of teams that I think that the answer today is they didn't really do what I would have hoped that they would have done during the offseason, and I have no idea what the outcome is going to be. They're either going to finish at the bottom of the conference as we're projecting, or they're going to just go back to what we're used to seeing, which is finishing somewhere around that 8, 9, 10 range.
Eli Holstein's very interesting to me, Joe. A very talented quarterback that went to Alabama, got beat out to some extent here by Dylan Lonergan. Now you're in a situation where you have a very ultra-talented quarterback that a lot of people had as one of their top quarterbacks in the country is now at Pitt. I do wonder about their running game. I do think that they have a pair of running backs that can really get things going, but I agree with you. I mean, their ceiling at max has got to be 8, 9 wins here, so we'll see. Joe, is there anybody else on your list that you want to get to here, 9 through 17?
I want to bring up Boston College. You were a little low on them, and I understand new coaching staff, Bill O'Brien steps in, that there is a little bit of pause and that it'd be easy to throw them at the bottom of the conference. I think that Castellanos, their quarterback, is enough of a spark plug and enough of a juice provider that if the rest of this team isn't totally living up to expectation and living up to what's needed for them to be competitive, I think Castellanos is a big play guy, man. I really do. We saw that what he did against Florida State. We saw what he did a number of games last year. Not exactly like an elite quarterback from a throwing standpoint, but he's just such a good athlete. I think he caused a lot of headaches for defenses on their schedule.
Let me tell you this. If Bill O'Brien would have been there in December, I wouldn't have had an issue. But because that he got there late, I'm very skeptical, right? Like, Joe, you remember this was spring ball that we're talking about Chip Kelly going to Ohio State here. So I don't think that he is going to change his offensive ways and play calling and style. You know, a good friend of our show, a very close friend of our show, clearly, was on an Alabama staff when Bill O'Brien was there. He didn't change verbiage for anybody. I mean, he had to learn some of Nick's stuff, but his stuff went with his verbiage. I am just playing the odds that I'm just going to give him a rent a year, if I'm being honest, because I have no idea what to expect from them. Zero, zilch. Now, if you play college football 25, they're always in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Bill O'Brien turns that place around very quickly.
Yeah, it's such a weird outcome that college football 25 for some reason really likes them. I want to talk about Syracuse though. Can we talk about Syracuse?
Yeah, let's talk about the Qs.
Syracuse, one of the top teams in terms of just returning production. Their offense brings back more than people expect, and I'm excited about some of the SEC faces that Fran Brown brought in. But more importantly, bringing in Kyle McCord, who didn't fit the expectations of what Ohio State needed, is heads above anything that they've had at quarterback in the last 20 years, maybe longer. I can't think of the last. And no, we're not going to include, oh my God, what was the goofballs? DeVito. We're not going to include DeVito, who was there for a brief period of time. I think that Kyle McCord really raises the floor for this team. I don't think that they're good enough to launch themselves into the top half of the conference, but putting them anywhere lower than 11 where I tracked them just feels way too pessimistic. I think McCord's going to be great this year, as much as Ohio State fans love to shit on him.
They bring in back guys like Deuce Chestnut, came to the SEC, was a really big deal. What does Fidel Diggs give you? What does Deion Wilson Jr. give you? Two guys that they bring in there. I want Fran and them to very much succeed. I mean, look, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with you because I have them at 9.
Yeah, not much separation.
There's not much separation there. I think they're going to be better than the lower tier teams, but I still think they're going to get splattered by the top tier teams. And I think that for me, when I was doing this today and going into last night and really sitting down, like going through all of this, Joe, I think that this is a massive separation when you start getting 1 through 8 versus 9 through 17, right? Like there's a very wide gap here. So I think Syracuse in year 1 under Fran Brown is going to be good. I'm just, as much as I love New York and the people love New York, they're my people now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. Joe, let's go through the 1 through 8 here. I'll start it off. Number 8, I have UNC, SMU. We can talk about them too at 7, Louisville at 6, NC State at 5. Virginia Tech, the biggest sleeper of them all, at number 4. Clemson at number 3. Florida State at 2. And Miami at number 1. What is your 1 through 8?
I have at number 8 SMU, 7 UNC, 6 Louisville, number 5 Virginia Tech, number 4 NC State, 3 Clemson, 2 Florida State, and then number 1 Miami. I'm stunned. You're higher on Virginia Tech than I am. I really thought I was going to be coming in here and I was going to have to bang the table and support them. Well, let's talk about Virginia Tech, man. This defense, this secondary that they have with Mansour DeLeone and Dorian Strong is unbelievably underrated. I think that their defensive line is going to be really quality. Brent Pry is a really just strong defensive mind. And as we mentioned when we did the preview, Kyron Drones has some tape where he just really flashes. He only threw 3 interceptions last year and he rushed for over 800 yards. He could be a guy that has the tools to take a huge step forward. And I'm betting on that, man. I will always bet on traits when we start to see a guy get more and more comfortable, more and more confident. He's going to get there. I think this Virginia Tech team is going to be a tough out for anybody in the conference.
Yeah, dude, when you look at the ACC as a whole, let me just say this. 1 through 8, Joe, you got some pretty quality athletes, okay? It's just at the lower tier that you don't. Virginia Tech at number 4 to me. Joe, I'm very close when we talk about playoff contenders. If I'm going to throw in a sleeper for this year, it's going to be Virginia Tech. They are my TCU. They are my swan song here, baby. I am rolling with the Hokies. Joe, that defense is going to be sick. It's going to be nasty. And when you can stop teams from scoring, you're going to be in every single ball game. And that gets to the point, how good can Drones be? Joe, if he does develop, if he takes the next step, they're going to win games that people have no – Joe, at the end of the year, I feel like 9-3, 10-2, really good year for them. We're going to start talking about Virginia Tech being back. That's where I think that they are right now. They have really built in all the right places.
Well, and one thing I think –
go ahead.
Sorry, what I was going to say is one thing that I think always gets disregarded when talking about Virginia Tech and what they can be. A lot of people don't really pay attention to how much of a recruiting hotbed the DMV is, which is Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. And typically, it's kind of a seesaw between, is Maryland recruiting that region the best? Is it Virginia Tech who's recruiting that region the best? And it feels like Virginia Tech's starting to trend back in that direction where they're
certainly making the right decisions on prospects because they're not giving those top premier guys. What they are doing is winning the scouting battle. Right? And you see that all over their defense, all over their defensive line. Hot take. You ready? They're going to upset somebody that they shouldn't. They're going to beat a team from our 1 through 3 that they shouldn't. Because there's nobody in the ACC that can't drop a game because of lack of stability or just, they're a young team being together. Like, I think Miami, God forbid, Miami might slip up on one because of how many transfers they have. Now, I do think that Cam Ward and we'll talk about them and company are going to be really good. Virginia Tech's going to surprise some people, man, and they could be my dark horse going into the year.
Yeah, I think that just ultimately they've got all these right tools for them to be successful. And I think that they could have a year like Louisville. I mean, if Louisville was able to do what they did and sneak past everyone when Clemson had a down year and Miami was struggling as much as they did down the stretch, they just slid their way in. But more importantly, it was because they had a really favorable schedule. And Virginia Tech also has a very favorable schedule, as we talked about in that preview that we did. So here's the only flip-flop that we had. I think you had it NC State at 5.
I do have. You have them at 4, and I have them at 5. Yeah. So the only difference here is I'm putting Virginia Tech ahead of them. Is that the team like that? If they upset somebody and get over them, I'm high on NC State. I like NC State, but go ahead.
No. I cut you off. Go ahead. Sorry. Finish your point.
I just think here that because Virginia Tech also has a very favorable schedule, that, Joe, not only with that, but how they're built defensively with a very highly athletic quarterback. Are you 1,000% sure that NC State is more talented than them?
I think that the difference where I'm going here is that I have a not confirmed, but an experienced commodity in Grayson McCall. I really like Kyron Jones. I think that Kyron Jones' ceiling is much higher than Grayson McCall's, but Grayson McCall has 42 career games and over 10,000 passing yards in his time at Coastal Carolina. He's played a ton of football. And I think that having that experience, last year, that NC State team was good. Casey Concepcion was exploding onto the scene as a freshman last year. Their offensive line was underrated. Their defense was underrated, but they couldn't figure out consistency at quarterback. They had 2 different guys that they played. They were having so many issues just trying to have a consistent passing attack. I think you throw Grayson McCall in here, strong coaching staff. We know that they're pretty consistent. That, to me, is what gets them over the hump, just slightly ahead of Virginia Tech for me, just very slightly.
Okay. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to put him at 4, I'm going to put him at 5. I mean, like, what's the difference?
Right.
I mean, the only difference that I have is that I'm just higher on Virginia Tech than you are. And I think that that's it for me there. Joe, let's get to the top 3 here. Let's refresh it. Miami at number 1, Florida State at number 2, Clemson at number 3. Joey, both have the Miami Hurricanes winning the ACC. I think here's what I think. I think from a national level, you and I have been more Miami friendly, if that makes sense. I think that we're not worried about Cristobal as some are, but we both have the Miami Hurricanes winning the ACC here.
I just think, and this is going to be a take that's not loved, because again, I know we have a lot of Florida State fans that tune in, but we've also suddenly built up this following of Miami fans. I just think that it's lazy to do the whole, well, this coach always finds a way to screw things up. There is truth to that for some coaches. Like James Franklin has done it to a hilariously high level. But the bigger issue for him is a lack of player development. He has recruited at a high level, and a lot of these defensive prospects that he's had just have not translated to the level that they've needed to actually winning the Big Ten. I don't think this applies to Mario as much as people think. Yes, he makes horrible in-game decisions at times. Really bad in-game decisions. We saw the Georgia Tech game last year. But that team last year wasn't perfect. That was the real reason why that they had a skid, is because they didn't have a consistent quarterback that they could rely on, despite their offensive line being as strong as it was, their run game being as good as it was, their front 7 being as physical of a presence as they had. This year is very different. This offense is one of the best in the country. And we have to look past any opposing fan bias to admit that. Cam Ward has an unreal arm, and he has receivers that he's never had the opportunity to work with. Xavier Restrepo is fantastic.
Don't ever talk about the incarnate word like that again.
He didn't have any receivers. There was one white kid that he used to throw to, and I forget where he ended up. But my final point is Damian Martinez, who I keep bringing up, with that offensive line, if Cam Ward has a bad game, which he's going to have a bad game, He has done that in his whole career where he has 1 week he's had a ridiculous stat line and then he's crapped his pants the next week. It's just, he's a very ballsy, risky quarterback. It just happens sometimes. Damian Martinez is there. He is a workhorse. He's 240 pounds and he's 5'11". He is going to run through people's chests if he has to. So if they need to rely on the run game, they can. And I bet you this, he ain't fumbling at the end of the game in the fourth quarter. He's just not going to. So I'm all in on this offense.
Well, look, I'm not going to say he's not going to fumble. Okay.
I know, I'm just kind of a joke.
I think people forget that Cristobal at Oregon existed. Okay. And look, I'm just higher on Cristobal than others at the current moment. Joe, there's only so much that you can do when you have that much talent. And it's not all Miami for me. Why I'm picking them to win it. I am not sold on DJU. And here's the truth. When it came down for me, okay, at the end of all of this, instead of putting Florida State at 1 and instead of putting Miami there when I probably would have gone with Florida State, Joe, I trust Cam Ward more than I trust DJU. And that's the bottom line for me. That was the selling factor for me. I think both teams are highly talented. Would it surprise me if Florida State won the ACC? Hell no. Not remotely close. I think that it is a
they're right up against them. There is not much separation.
Well, it's a pick 'em for me. I'm not going to sit here and argue with you if you are going to tell me, Blake, Miami this, Miami that, Florida State's going to win the ACC. Okay, good on you. Joe, I've had 4 years of watching DJU in front of me, and everywhere he's gone in crunch time, he has folded. Now, they're saying everything coming out of camp, of course it is, that DJU looks great. Okay, then that doesn't erase the 4 years of bad that I've seen from him. How is one camp going to erase 4 years of bad that we've seen? So the thing for me is when it came down to it, gun to your head, who are you going to pick? I just trust Cam Ward in decision making when it comes to DJU. He's going to make the plays that DJU can.
I want to change that take that you're having. It's less about do I trust Cam Ward more than DJU. It's more about one guy has the tools to take over a game if he needs to. Cam Ward has a ridiculous arm that allows him to make really difficult throws. And a lot of people, I saw are people in the comments saying that, he turns the ball over ridiculously. He makes a lot of bad decisions. He reminds me a lot of Jordan Love in the NFL, where at the beginning of his time with the Packers as the starting quarterback, he was taking a lot of ballsy, risky decisions because he knew that he could take those chances, and it wasn't paying off just because his decision-making, his experience wasn't there yet. I think that that's what we saw from Cam Ward early on in his career. And then now is the opportunity with better receivers, a better offensive line, better support system, better offensive coordinator, all of these things, that he can take those risks and they're going to pay off a lot better. There is far more upside for this offense to put up 21 points in a quarter and completely blow past you before you can keep up with them. We've seen DJU, and DJU is more of a game manager. DJU can do enough to keep things on schedule. And I think that they're going to change their identity to being more run-centric because they've got a really deep, strong running back room. Yeah, they do. But their running back room is really dangerous potentially.
Yeah.
I think Roydell Williams is going to be great for them this year.
I agree.
But if it comes down to you're down 10 points at the start of the fourth quarter and I need a couple of splash plays, I don't think that DJU is going to do that for me. I just don't.
Then how are you changing my take?
I'm not changing your take.
You said in the open, you literally started off, let me change the take a little bit. I
did change the take because it's less about trust and more about
it's at the end of it. The punchline that you came back with was the same exact punchline that I had here. So again,
trust just wasn't the right word because I also don't 100% trust Cam Ward because he also could throw a back-breaking interception. That's kind of where
but you know what you do trust? What you do trust is at some point, defensive line, yeah, both of them have a really good one. You know who does have the better offensive line? Miami. And it's not remotely close.
I won't know. I don't know if I'm going to go like that aggressive to saying it's not remotely close, but there is separation.
Joe, when you have that many freshmen, hold on. when you have that many freshmen that start and play that many snaps going into year 2, it's a big leap year. Every other position group, you talk about the sophomore slump. O-linemen, it's not the same with them, man. They take historically, they take bigger leaps because they're overwhelmed as a freshman. They take a lot of lumps. Joe, they might have the best 2 tackles, in my humble opinion, right and left tackle in the ACC as a combination of the 2 of them. Then you start getting that running game going. By the way, we're not talking about guys like A.J. Allen that's back in that backfield either. So you look at them and say, I just think that they're a more complete team from an offensive side of things. However, if you want to pick Florida State, go right on ahead because I can't argue with that. At the end of the day, I don't trust DJU enough more than I trust Cam Ward. That's the bottom line.
You want to talk about Clemson and how they fit
Sure.
into this? I feel like we're getting a lot
Look,
of
we got Florida State we got Florida State fans in the chat right now.
We're not picking against you.
Hold on. No, bullshit. You got a shitload that you have to prove.
Yeah.
You got multiple receivers that hit the NFL. You had an offensive line that you could not lean on when shit hit the fan.
Defensive linemen were high draft picks.
Right. So, again, you got a lot of shit that you have to replace. Miami has less shit to replace than you. And I love Florida State fans. Hold on, Joe. Yeah. I love Florida State fans. However, the naive things that happen when they start getting in these comments are you would say the same shit about any other school if that was their fan base. Oh, you got so much shit you got to replace. You got a lot of shit that you have to replace.
This is very different than last year, and I also, again, like we're not saying that Miami's
going to we put them in the playoff last year.
Yeah, we put them in the. We hate them. I did a little bit of a mock playoff prediction. I think Florida State gets in the playoff. Like I really think that they're going to go to the playoff. I think that both these teams could go 11-1, and then say theoretically Miami wins the championship game, that Florida State could sneak their way in. I think that is completely plausible if you told me that happens. But I don't. Miami's just the better team right now because of Cam Ward.
I know what's going to happen in these comments. Blake, the offensive line comment. Miami is more talented than you up front. They all returned. They're not. You are not more talented than they are up front. That is the bottom line fact. All right, let's get to Clemson. Joe, is Dabo on the hot seat?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you put him at 3, and my question becomes: if he doesn't win the ACC again, are we having the conversation? Should Dabo Swinney be on the hot seat? We both have him at 3.
Well, I mean, I've brought this up before, and I am not a Dabo supporter, but I'm not gonna start running with pitchforks just yet. I think that if they finish 3rd and say they finish 10-2 outside of the ACC championship game, no, I don't think that means he's on the hot seat. I think that he's done enough for that program. He gets way more leeway than I think most coaches who have had his same trajectory, because they were never in the national championship conversation until he got them there. And now suddenly the goalposts have moved for him, and he needs to accomplish a goal that wasn't even set out for him when he received the job offer to go from the interim to the head coach. But the reason why I have him at 3, I mean, it's just plain and simple. Clemson fans didn't like when we said this. They didn't have a receiver who had over 600 yards last year. Brennan Stool is a really good tight end. I love Brennan Stool. I love Phil Maffa. He runs hard as shit. But you guys don't have a receiver that went over 600 yards last year. Who am I missing?
The only thing that I will say for Clemson that, Joe, I think we need to monitor early is even in a loss to Georgia. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Joe, what happens if offensively they don't have the turnovers that they had a year ago? Because they were number 1 in the country in turnover rate. Number 1. Not only were they number 1 in that, they were top 5 in offensive turnover rate, which made it that much worse. So my question becomes, I do think that D-line is sick. I think it's disgusting. They have still recruited very well. Peter Woods.
Lost 2 guys, though.
Okay. Here comes Peter Woods. Good luck.
And Demonte Capehart is actually the most highly coveted of the group, which is, I think, surprising to most. The NFL really likes Capehart. He is a haul of a human being to try to move. But I don't like using the turnover rate discussion because there's a lot more.
I asked you if they didn't turn the football over last year, what would happen?
I don't know how much. Like, yeah, if they clean that up,
Joe, they're 10-2.
if they clean that up, yes, that helps them. But I think that the level of competition that they have to deal with at the top with Miami and Florida State,
I agree.
think that they're rising. They're getting tougher and tougher to beat.
I agree.
I don't think it
have them
changes
at
much.
3. Yeah, I mean, that's why we have them both have them at 3. Can Riley? I was about to call him Lincoln. It's not Lincoln. It's
Garrett
Riley. Can Garrett Riley take a big step forward in year 2 as the OC? Can Dabo take a step back? Now, I will say, because this is what the comments are going to say for you on Clemson. Big thing coming out of fall camp for them is that they think that they found 2 receivers. And say what you want. Okay.
Like a week in. We're like a week in. What? We found 2 receivers. Look, they're standing there. There's 2 guys on the field.
I mean, it's the talk of their camp. How can you argue with what people
We're
are
a week in. We're a week in. I hate when these camp headlines come out. This is my one thing to stand on here.
Why do I feel like you're mad at me? I'm not
mad at you. I'm just mad at that's what the comments are going to be like. Whoa, you didn't know that such and such was having a great camp. It doesn't matter. It's camp. It's camp.
Can I finish my question?
Sorry, go ahead.
What happens if they have found 2 guys that can play? Let's say this camp report is legitimate for just a second. Okay, let's play the hypothetical what-if game.
Okay.
If they do find 2 receivers and Klubnik gets a little bit more action than he did a year ago, then what? Because, Joe, defensively, they are good. And if they do get better playmaking on the offensive side of the football, I'm going to be real with you. Joe, they can be a contender. And that's the thing that I think is scary for some people. If they clean their shit up offensively,
but it's not as simple as just it's not as simple as just cleaning it up, though.
I get that, but cleanups happen. You literally said Jane Daniels was going undrafted. Okay,
I didn't say he was going undrafted. Don't put those words in.
6th-round draft pick. Okay, excuse me.
I said he was a day 3 draft pick. Saying he was applying
6th-round draft pick.
Joe Burrow was far lower down on the projection scale than what I had.
Don't you dare say that things can't happen in development from one year to the next when this happens.
But did LSU not have a receiver who exceeded 600 yards going into that year?
They had one. You want to know his name?
It was Justin Jefferson, right?
Justin Jefferson.
So you kind of had an idea of what to expect.
Yeah, but Joe Burrow threw 16 touchdown passes. I mean, he didn't light the world on fire.
I have the expectation that Garrett Riley, Cade Klubnik are going to be better in their second year working together. Just because naturally the second year in a relationship of being able to know what does and doesn't work is just huge for a quarterback, an offensive coordinator, a head coach, all of those things to mesh. But it's a big ask to suddenly have 2 receivers who are going to be more than just average for an ACC receiver. You need somebody who's on like the national scale for this offense to improve. And I agree with you. I do agree with you, though. If they can get a 1,200-yard receiver and an 800-yard guy, they're the best team in the ACC potentially. Like they're beating Miami, they're beating Florida State.
They defense, and you feel that way because of what they've done defensively. We'll see, man. We'll see. Any other thoughts before we get out of here on the ACC and get to the coaches poll?
No. I know that fans are going to be mad at us about back in Miami again, but it is what it is.
Well, they won't be mad at us about Miami. It's the Florida State fans that will be in our comments going absolutely.
Well, by the way, I would like to point out, I think that we have developed and grown more of a Miami viewership base than the Florida State base.
Oh, they hated us last year.
But Florida State fans are now outnumbered in our comment sections. It's hilarious.
I know. All right. Let's get to this coaches poll very quickly. So, Joe, the coaches poll came out today, and I'm going to pull this up here very quickly. Hold on. That way that we have it here so people can see it in case they missed it. But, Joe, the coaches poll came out today. Here it is from On 3. Georgia at number 1. I'm not going to read down the list. If you can view it, if you're on podcast, I apologize. But, Joe, here's the 1 through 25. What do you think of this list of the coaches poll top 25?
The biggest gripe that I have, and I know that we're really picking at straws here and getting really granular because the coaches poll is historically extremely inaccurate and also very poorly informed because most of these guys that make these picks are interns on the coaching staff. It's not actually Mike Elko and Kirby Smart and Ryan Day are not making these picks. It is some goober who has just joined the coaching staff and is fetching coffee, or someone who's like mid-level that's making these votes for the most part. No Virginia Tech's BS. I'm like really surprised. It just kind of feeds into what we talked about earlier, and I think what we've talked about this whole offseason. I think that there is, I don't want to call it disrespect. I think just a lot of people don't know what to expect from Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm gonna be shitty. USC doesn't belong in the top 25 right now. They're coming off of a former Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and former first overall pick. Lincoln Riley has pointed out he has not made a decision apparently for who's the starter. We're really going to bank on them being the 23rd best team in the country. That would imply that they are the the fourth best Big Ten team. That just feels a little bit optimistic. No, fifth best. Sorry. Maybe that's actually fitting. Forgot about
USC is up there because they're playing a premier matchup on a Sunday night, and they need two ranked opponents on a premier Sunday night.
There you
go. Well, let me ask you like this, Joe. When I look at the top 15, where did they get it wrong?
I see. You could really shuffle and move most of these teams around.
Outside of four. Okay, you legitimately the top four.
Yeah, you can put them in your hand, shake them up, and then throw them on a board, and you wouldn't be wrong.
I don't think that you would be wrong. Here's the thing, though. You know what? The one thing that I noticed in all of this, not one G5 team is ranked in there. So one of these teams from 10 to, let's just say 18, okay, might be left out here. Now, you're still going to need the Big 12 champion. That could be potentially Oklahoma State. They would be in too, or Utah. But there's Utah there. So again, Joe, I mean, if you're in the 10 through 20 range, I think it could be a good barometer for you potentially being left out. Does Missouri get left out? Does LSU get left out? Does Clemson get left out? Does Tennessee or Oklahoma get left out? Joe, I don't think that they got a lot wrong. I can't believe this might be the first time that I'm looking at this and saying to myself, I just don't know how much they got wrong in the premier top of it.
What is kind of weird, though, I think the only G5 team who received votes was Memphis, which Seth Hennigan's a good quarterback.
They're hot. A lot of people think Memphis is going to be the team that comes out and wins that thing.
Memphis can be a great team in the AAC and win the AAC this year. I know that you and I had that whole debate with Boise State and you weren't super bullish on Malachi Nelson, but I don't know how you can't pick Liberty or Boise State. And it's also crazy to think that after what Liberty did last year, how they're just suddenly off there. Let me ask you this, though. Oklahoma feels a little high. Don't you think?
Here's the thing with Oklahoma to me, and I took it off. Let me bring it back up.
They were 16.
Is 16.
I mean, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Miami.
So they would be, hold on, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, Tennessee. So they're the 8th best team in the SEC. Would that be plausible?
That's not what the question. Well, first of all, I'm probably going to have Tennessee or Texas A&M ahead of Oklahoma. But past the 8th best,
you would do that because Notre Dame plays them. But if you put them at 9,
to do with it.
Even if you put them at 9, no, I don't. Joe, here's the thing. No, I don't think they're too high. Because
I don't finish anywhere near there, though.
Might not be, but shit's not created. I'm going to keep telling you this, Joe. A 7-5 Oklahoma is not created equally in any other conference.
I don't know. I don't think that. I think that there are better teams than Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma should probably be more in the 20s.
Okay, name them.
The teams that are better than Oklahoma.
Yeah, if they're at 16, name the teams better than them.
I would put Miami ahead of them. Without a doubt, I would put Miami ahead of them.
Fair.
I would put Oklahoma State pretty comfortably ahead of them. I'd put Kansas State ahead of them. And again, I'd put Texas A&M ahead of them.
Okay, now you've gone too far.
We talked about this. They have a quality roster and a good team. But there is a massive
SEC bashing.
No, this is Oklahoma bashing. They're not an SEC team. They just became an SEC team. They're not historically an SEC team.
They're in now. They've been in, so you're SEC bashing.
I can't get in on that, man. I think that with all that they're shuffling in on their offensive line, and Jackson Arnold had one game and he looked like a mess in that game. Could he get better? Absolutely. There's a high expectation for what he can be. But he turned the ball over a shit ton against Arizona, who is ranked below them. And Arizona brings back more accomplished starters at key positions personally than Oklahoma does right now.
I just don't think it's created equally. They could be the 8th or 9th.
They literally lost to Arizona. What do you mean it's not created equally?
They legitimately could lose to 4 playoff teams with their schedule.
Yeah, and they won't be ranked.
Okay, and that's not fair to me. And these aren't ranked. These are power rankings. We're talking about power rankings. Joe, if they lose to 4, if their only 4 losses are to playoff teams, then what?
Then they won't be in the playoff, and they'll be like 25th.
Okay, but you can't say that it's not that they weren't a better team than what you're going to see in the Big 12 or ACC or Big 10. John, an 8-4 team in the Big 10 is Iowa.
I'm just a little perplexed by there's suddenly this massive separation between them and the Big 12 teams when they just improved they improved this offseason, but enough for us to sit here and say that they're heads above the Big 12, who they just played against and lost a bunch of games against. They lost to Oklahoma State last year. They lost to Kansas last year, who's ranked below them. I just don't really get it. You know, they were just playing against those teams. This isn't like 3 years ago.
I'm not going to lie. You got me on that one.
That's a first.
Well, I mean, I can't defend them on that. It's the argument that I use on them. I can't defend that.
All right. Fair. Are you content with LSU's placement?
I don't care about it. I mean, like, I literally am not going to talk about it. I might mention it because you said something in the opening. I might mention it, but it doesn't matter to me. Because here's the thing. If you're at a place like Notre Dame, LSU, Oklahoma, if you win ball games, it doesn't matter where the shit you're placed.
Yeah.
Okay, like it doesn't. I will remind, last time LSU was at 12, Brian Cully won the SEC.
You mean, you're talking about like...
yeah, I'm just saying.
In 2022?
Yeah, in 2022, last time he was ranked number 12. Everybody's sleeping on Brian Cully.
You love these just random correlative things.
I mean, but it's fact, though.
Yeah, but but that's not how trends
I'm
work.
superstitious.
That's okay. That's a good answer. That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
LSU's got to be ranked 6 for them to win in the preseason for them to win a national title. I'm convinced. It's where they start off.
How many times has that happened?
4. All of
4 national.
All of them. You rank, and you know what? Here's the bad thing. Guess where they were ranked in the beginning of the season last year?
6.
Yep, and they lost it. Freaking Brian Kelly. All right. We'll see y'all again on Wednesday. Y'all have a good night. Peace.